The door swung inward with a faint, dry click. Goldilocks stepped across the threshold into a stillness that felt heavy. No voices, no movement. Just the scent of oats and honey clinging to the air. She moved to the center of the kitchen where 3 bowls sat waiting on the wood-grain surface. She reached for the largest one first, scooping a heavy spoonful to her lips. The heat hit her tongue like a brand, forcing a sharp, involuntary wince as she dropped the spoon back into the ceramic. The clatter echoed against the walls. She moved to the medium bowl, desperate for relief. But the texture was grainy and the flavor flat. She spat the mouthful onto the floor and wiped her hand across her mouth in frustration. Then, she pulled the tiny bowl toward her. One bite, then another. The heat was perfect, the consistency smooth, and the sweetness just right. She did not stop until the spoon scraped the bottom, leaving the vessel completely empty. Her stomach settled. The house remained silent, but the immediate hunger was gone. She stood up, pushed the empty bowl aside, and turned toward the living room, ready for what else the house might offer. She wandered into the living room, seeking a place to settle her weight. She climbed onto the largest chair, but the rigid wooden frame pressed hard against her spine, forcing her to slide off in annoyance. She moved to the medium chair, hoping for comfort, but the padding was deceptive. She sank deep into the base, her feet dangling inches from the floor, trapped in a soft, suffocating grip. She pushed herself upright and finally stepped toward the tiny chair. It looked sturdy. She sat down, and for a moment, it was perfect. She leaned back, rocking once, twice, testing the balance. Then, a sharp, splintering crack tore through the quiet. The frame gave way beneath her, sending her tumbling onto the floor in a heap of broken wood. She ignored the debris and climbed the stairs, her movements sluggish with sudden fatigue. She pushed open the bedroom door and found 3 beds lined against the wall. The first was as hard as a slab of stone. The second was a chaotic pile of feathers that offered no support. She reached the third and collapsed onto it, finding the surface firm yet yielding. She pulled the heavy blanket up to her chin, her eyes fluttering shut, and within seconds, she was lost to a deep, heavy sleep, entirely unaware of the silence she had left behind. The heavy front door groaned on its hinges, pushing inward with a sudden, rhythmic thud of paws against the floorboards. The 3 bears entered the kitchen, their forms blocking the light from the hallway. Father Bear stopped, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed the lingering scent of oats. He walked to the table, staring down at his bowl, and let out a low, vibrating growl that rattled the silverware. "Someone has been eating my porridge," he rumbled. Mother Bear stepped forward, peering into her own bowl, and let out a sharp, incredulous gasp. "Someone has been eating mine too," she hissed. Baby Bear pushed past them, his eyes wide as he looked at his empty, clean-scraped bowl. He let out a high, thin wail that cut through the room. "Someone has eaten all of mine." The air grew thick with a new, jagged tension. They did not linger. The group stomped into the living room, their heavy breathing audible over the floorboards. Father Bear pointed a thick finger at his chair, his voice dropping to a dangerous, steady register. "Someone has been sitting in my chair." Mother Bear stood beside him, her expression hardening. "Someone has been sitting in mine," she added. Baby Bear moved to the center of the room, his voice shaking as he pointed to the wreckage of wood and fabric. Someone broke my chair. The sound of their collective, heavy breathing filled the space, and they turned as one toward the staircase. The heavy, rhythmic thumping of feet on the stairs signaled their approach. Each step shook the frame of the house, a slow, deliberate march that grew louder with every passing second. Goldilocks remained motionless, buried under the covers, her breathing deep and rhythmic in the quiet bedroom. The bears reached the landing. Father Bear stomped into the room first, his presence commanding the space, followed closely by Mother Bear and Baby Bear. They moved from bed to bed, their shadows stretching long across the walls. Father Bear let out a low, guttural growl as he inspected his own rumpled linens. Mother Bear followed suit, her frustration mounting as she checked the state of her sleeping space. Then, the sound stopped. Baby Bear stood at the foot of the final bed, his small frame trembling as he pointed a trembling finger. "Someone is still in my bed," he shrieked. The sound shattered the silence. Goldilocks jolted, her eyes snapping open to the sight of 3 massive figures looming directly over her. Panic surged, raw and immediate. She did not scream. She moved. She vaulted off the mattress, her feet hitting the floorboards with a sharp slap, and she sprinted toward the open window. She cleared the sill in one desperate lunging motion, her body twisting as she leaped into the cool air of the garden, the sound of heavy paws thundering behind her. She hit the soft grass of the garden with a jarring thud, legs pumping immediately to find traction. Behind her, the window frame groaned under the weight of a heavy body. She did not look back. She pushed her stride, lungs burning as she banked around the vegetable patch. Her foot caught on a thick root, sending her stumbling forward, but she threw her weight to regain balance and kept sprinting. The sound of heavy, rhythmic thuds against the earth followed her, closer than she dared to imagine. She reached the edge of the property, where the dense line of village trees began. She plunged into the thicket, branches whipping against her skin, and did not stop until she reached the deep shade of the inner grove. She leaned against a thick trunk, gasping for air, her heart hammering against her ribs. Only then did she turn. The garden was empty. The house stood silent. She had escaped.